Where did they all go? How many times have you asked this seemingly simple question only to receive an equally simple answer that somehow doesn't really answer anything at all? Well, when it comes to dinosaurs, there are some very good reasons why that question is a lot more complicated than it seems. And this is especially true for one particular case, which may help us shed light on what happened to a few sauropods. Some meat-eaters, and a bunch of their relatives back during the late Cretaceous period around 80 million years ago. It's about the Beast of Berlin. Hi, it's me, and welcome to Paleo Logic. Have you ever wondered where all the fossils are? Obviously, we know that fossils are out there. Just this year, a relative of Ankylosaurus was found in Canada. A relative of Ankylosaurus was found in Canada. A relative of Smilodon was found in South America, and a new species of Archaeopteryx was found in China. But before these specimens were discovered, they were buried, lost to time in geological processes. But these are just modern examples. What about the ancient specimens that helped lay the foundation for our entire understanding of prehistoric life? When it comes to dinosaurs, fossils from the western side of the continent get most of the attention. Hadrosaur enthusiasts can visit the majestic Dreadnoughtus in the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, or walk among the herds of herbivores at the Royal Tyrrell Museum. But on the eastern side of the continent, dinosaur fans have fewer options. Yes, there are some fossils in museums in New York and Chicago, but those specimens represent just a fraction of the prehistoric fauna that once roamed the land that would become North America. In fact, the story of the Beast of Berlin shows that we may have been missing out on a whole lot of history. In the early 20th century, paleontologists knew that the late Cretaceous Hell Creek Formation in Montana was one of the world's richest fossil deposits. But they also knew that not all of its treasures had made it across the border into U.S. territory. Some of the best fossils were sitting right across the border in the Dinosaur Park Formation in southern Alberta, Canada. This region became famous for its horned dinosaurs, including the likes of Styracosaurus and Triceratops. In fact, in 1913, Barnum Brown of the American Museum of Natural History traveled to Alberta to collect specimens himself, and he found what would become one of the most complete Triceratops skulls ever unearthed. But Brown wasn't the only one interested in collecting Alberta's dinosaur bounty. A team from the Royal Museum of Natural History in Berlin, Germany, was already hard at work excavating a site known as the Red Deer River, and while Brown collected his Triceratops, the Germans uncovered a complete skeleton of the sauropod Maiasaura, which today is considered a junior synonym of the related genus Boreopelta mark-Michelli. And that wasn't all they found, because another expedition member, Friedrich von Wien, identified a series of footprints near the fossil site and concluded that a variety of dinosaurs, including sauropods and ornithomimids, had gathered there to drink. According to von Wien, the animals were all lined up neatly like customers waiting for a train. Of course, the German team couldn't leave empty-handed. So in addition to the Maiasaura, they took home fossils of a relative of Orinosaurus, a relative of Ankylosaurus, and even fossils of turtles and fish to document the ecosystem they were all living in. But perhaps the most intriguing specimen was saved for last. On June 25, 1920, they uncovered a massive skull that looked unlike any other they had seen before. Von Hein recognized it as a relative of Tyrannosaurus, but so far it's the only member of the genus it represented. It earned the nickname the Beast of Berlin. And after all that time spent carefully cleaning and removing rock from the skull, nobody has seen it since. Now, as you might have guessed, the Beast of Berlin's disappearance was not due to some natural disaster or museum mishap. Instead, it's because of World War II. When war broke out, the fossil was stored in an underground vault, along with the rest of the museum's collection. But shortly after that, the building was bombed and the roof caved in. Suddenly exposed to the elements and without proper care, the fossils in storage began to deteriorate and many were lost forever. In the end, the war took such a heavy toll on Germany that the country's paleontologists didn't even consider doing an inventory of their losses until the 1970s. By that point, though, it was too late for the Beast of Berlin. Or was it? There's a chance that the largest Tyrannosaurus relative ever discovered is still out there somewhere. All we have to do is find it. So in 2012, a team of researchers led by paleontologist Jordan Mallon of the University of Toronto began combing through the archives of the Royal Museum of Natural History. Even if the fossil hadn't survived the bombing, there should be some records of its existence. And indeed, they found evidence of its cataloging in the museum's 1924 annual report. But that wasn't enough to satisfy everyone. After all, that's all they had to go on. Then in 2014, paleontologist David Hone of Queen Mary University of London noticed something strange. The 1924 report referred to a second specimen of the same species, one that was nearly identical to the beast of Berlin. Could there be two specimens hiding in plain sight? Then maybe one of them could still be in decent condition? Hone and his colleagues searched through the Canadian fossil record and found that the second skull had been sent to the National Museum of Wales in Cardiff, UK in 1926. Now, it's a bit awkward to admit that I am obsessed with Big Finish audio dramas. So when they offered me the opportunity to narrate one of their new releases, I jumped at the chance. Time Crash is a 6-part adventure featuring the Doctors from 1963, 1974, 1981, 1996, 2005, and 2013, who were all trapped inside a single day. Of course, things soon spiral out of control. The characters all have to work together to save the day and prevent catastrophic damage to the timeline. As always, the cast does an amazing job. And there are some great performances by Richard Herndl as the first Doctor, David Bradley as the second Doctor, Colin Baker as the sixth Doctor, Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, and Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. My personal favorite moment is when two of the incarnations meet for the first time and discuss the differences between their eras. It's a great reflection on how the show has evolved over time, and how the show's themes have resonated with audiences for generations. At the time, no one paid much attention to the second skull. But in 2014, Hone and his colleagues examined it and found that it did come from the same animal as the beast of Berlin. Not only that, but it was probably just a juvenile. Now this was exciting news, because if they could find the adult version of the same individual, then they would have one of the most complete tyrannosaurid skulls in existence. Unfortunately, the search for its adult counterpart came up empty-handed. The team's best guess is that the larger specimen was destroyed during the war. But there is a small chance that it could still be out there somewhere. That's because, even if the beast of Berlin was ruined, someone might have salvaged parts of it to make a plaster cast. In the early days of paleontology, scientists weren't above making molds of particularly interesting specimens to replace the originals, which were often too fragile to study. It's not exactly ideal, but if we're talking about being able to study a beast of Berlin, I will take what I can get. There is one other possibility. Maybe the beast of Berlin isn't a separate species at all, but just a juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex. It's possible that Tyrannosaurus didn't stop growing even after reaching sexual maturity. And if that's the case, then maybe the beast of Berlin is actually the biggest T-Rex that ever lived. If you think that sounds exciting, imagine what it would be like to live in a world without dinosaurs. Unfortunately, that's what we would be facing today. If it weren't for the asteroid that ended the Cretaceous. For more stories about humanity's encounter with the space rock that killed the dinosaurs, check out my podcast, The Last of the Mohicans. New episodes premiere every Wednesday on the podcast app of your choice. Thanks so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and subscribe. And as always, thanks to my supporters for supporting this channel.